But though this is all really helpful, Joe, because people need to hear other people's
Mm.
experiences and what
Yeah.
works and what doesn't work. So yeah, definitely sharing your experience is going to be helpful for other people.
Yeah, no, that's great. And then the other thing, then just sticking on the kind of the warm dog, which when I read that listened to that podcast, I'm 100% convinced she is because she's just everything. I was like, oh, that's Bella.
Yeah.
Um, some of the meats I struggle to know what they are because all the lists are out there, aren't they? The cooling proteins, the neutrals, and the warms. But then there's things like camel and horse, and they're just not on the list because it's designed, I would imagine, for a human kind of food market. Is there a way I can find out those more unusual proteins?
I've nearly got there in terms of because that's one of the questions that the girls have always asked me in the shop, what's camel, what's horse, what's kangaroo, like.
Yeah,
But the I think horse is it's to do with the hooves. There was a pattern to do with the hooves,
Hmm.
with whether they were because goat's hot, venison, it's to do and
Whether or not they're ungulates,
thank
they've
you,
got
that's the word.
whether
She
whether no,
interesting.
whether the hooves do this or they're like
Okay, so a
so a
horse
horse
is
like
just
a cow.
one
So
solid.
I would go neutral for cat for
yeah,
horse. I would say it's neutral.
I see how interesting. Camel's got.
Yes, so I would say he's probably going to be hot.
yeah. And it's
And energetically coming from the desert.
yeah. Yeah, so that's the other thing that you look at is like where are they coming from and also how have they been reared? Because if they've been so we see this a lot with common meats for us like beef, for example. They can be quite warm to neutral depending on whether it's industrially reared or it's grass-fed, right? And so
Yeah,
if the animals are specifically being reared in a particular way for the food industry, that will affect the energetics of it.
yeah. I mean, I think we have to assume that most of the food, although it's human grade, most of it, the reality is going to be your kind of more farmed food rather
You're
than
if you're using dog's butcher stuff, that is much better in terms of where it's raised and how it's raised.
Mhm.
oh, okay.
So
Okay, that's
that's
good
like
to
one of the
know.
creme de la creme of ranges that we've got compared to something like PRTC, the chunks, which are great, but would be coming from the industrial, the kind of feedlot type
Yeah,
stuff. So
the
I
high.
can't think what I fed her this month. What did she have? She had wild boar.
that sounds like Reggie's then if it was wild boar.
Yeah, I think it might have
Reggie's
been
isn't too bad either in terms of their some of their stuff.
beef chunks. I think she did have beef chunks because the trouble is when you are taking away some of the meats like the venisons, the lamb, the really hot ones, it's very hard then to find ones that are more cooling. So I think she had goat. Did she have goat? I can't remember.
But don't forget if like
Duck.
so
She
for
had duck.
Ted's portions that I've just done for him, we're still in what we March, I think
We are in March. Yeah.
it's
Even
still
though it's
cold.
Arctic. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's still having venison and lamb in his portions, but I'm making sure there's enough wild boar and some duck and the
Hmm.
cooling protein so that as a bowl, as a
It's
portion,
it's
neutral essentially,
Yeah.
because I've balanced it between the two so that I've got pork pancreas in there and I use neutral or cooler offal, but
yeah,
then
she's got pork pancreas.
that's lovely. The pancreas is fab. Um, but that's how I do it. But give me wait until as soon as the temperatures start hitting kind of 15 consecutively, they'll come out
Mm.
because I know that that's when it triggers him to get too hot. So at the moment, he's still having them, but come
Hmm.
April, April, May-ish, they'll come off of his menu until September, October when it cools back down.
Okay.
And
Okay.
you don't even necessarily have to do it per bowl. So, for example, if you're thinking about over the course of a day, so like breakfast could be more warming and dinner be more cooling to neutral, right? So it doesn't have to just be in what they're eating, it's over the course of time. And usually, like a
Yes.
day is a good way to.
I do it by day at the moment. And then I take out, so like when I feed her dinner now, I've weighed out and done all her breakfast bowl for the morning. So that sits on the side in a Tupperware dish where she can smell it through the bedroom door.
Oh, brilliant.
It's six o'clock in the morning. She's like, I know there's food down there, and I'm not going back to sleep until I've had it.
There you go.
Yeah, I'm a Labrador. Does she like to sleep in? But because she's a bit like Ted, like once it's time to go out, it's time to go out, isn't it? It's like we must go now.
Oh, oh yes. Oh, it's now. And she'll just stare you down until you move.
That's Ted. That's the
Yeah.
hot thing. That's the. I'm
And
not.
it literally is. She'll come up as close as she can get and she'll just sit there and look at me. And you can't win.
Whereas, so my dog Lucky is a cool dog, and he'll sleep in until 10 o'clock. I have to pull him out of bed.
Why didn't I choose a cool dog?
I know. In my next selection process, I'll be like assessing. So does this puppy like to lay with the other puppies, or does this one lay on its own and away?
Yes.
Keep cool. Because I want the snuggler.
Yeah. Yeah. But interestingly, because it was my son actually got Bella, and then I said, don't get a lab puppy. Oh no, we really want one. I said, don't get one, but we're gonna, mum. They're adults. But then he was like, it all kind of went wrong. He's like, Mum, we're not coping. And I was like, oh, fine, she'd better come here then, hadn't she? He was like, thanks, Mum. So I have the dog. But
She landed on our paws though.
Pardon?
She landed on our paws.
She did that, yeah.
So much.
They keep telling me that. They're like, she was meant to be your dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Absolutely.
she just adores me. But she was the dog that came up and was very sociable, which again is a sign of a warm dog, isn't it? That really sociable, want to greet you, want to say hello to you.
Need to be glued to your
Yeah.
face.
It can be a warm dog. It could also be an earth constitution dog.
Well, that's a new one on me.
That's the 5 elements. So that's that
F.E.C.H.
takes like another dive in.
Yeah.
That's another layer.
It's another layer that we'll go into because it's really helpful and
Yeah, definitely.
yeah, it's the 5 elements of TCM, and a dog it's kind of like if you listen to the conversations I had with Rita on the Mystic Dog Mama podcast. So we talked about the warm and the cool, but then there's another.
That was the one I watched. That's the one I
yeah.
said, yes, of course, you were on it. Yes.
And then the other layer is dry and damp. That's kind of the next thing that we look at. But then constitution is associated with particular elements. And that gives us another flavor, not only of personality, but then how you can start to tailor supporting their organ system. So like going back to my dog Lucky, who's a little Chihuahua mix. He's a cool dog that is a water element. So that's fearful. It's also associated with the winter and the kidneys. So he had kidney problems when he was a wee one. So that told me that's his kind of weak spot in a sense. I feed him not only to warm him up, but to support his kidneys.
Okay, yes.
And through the water element, which includes feeding foods that are hydrating to the kidneys. So you can get into, I mean, TCM it's so complex. I don't know that any of us fully learn it, that it's something you can keep delving into. But particularly when you have an issue, if your dog is presenting with an issue, there are so many different ways to approach it through the TCM lens that if something's not quite working, you can tweak another layer of it. And I think that's what's brilliant, especially from the perspective of consultants. This book is like the Bible of it.
Oh, okay.
This is the one. This is literally got everything in. And Judy Morgan has done a fair bit. There's actually a quiz that you can take to figure out, because Ted's obviously a fire element, because why wouldn't he be fire? Because he's redhead and he's fiery red dog. So he's hot and fire. So hello.
And that's governed by the heart.
Okay, yeah, I'd be definitely interested to find out further about what Bella is so that I can support that. I
can send you the link, sweetheart.
Yes, thank you. And to kind of where I can, and just remind me of what it is so I can do a bit more, go down another rabbit hole.
Absolutely.
But I think seeing how much changing her food and supporting her and recognizing that she's a warm dog, so needs more cooling and neutral foods, has done so much good for her that it makes sense that I would want to go and have a little look at other stuff and see what else I can support, because I think I want to support her now while she's young, so that she just lives her best life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Because
exactly.
that's what we want for our dogs.
Absolutely.
It is. And the more you learn this, then the more as she changes, because she will change, you'll know how to tweak things and
Yeah.
responding to how she is in a
And
particular
you'll
moment,
feel
season.
confident doing that as well,
Mhm.
because you'll go, right, I know how to, you know, if I think this through, so even if you put it through the F.E.T.C.H lens and go through the F.E.T.C.H steps, like what's happening, how can I adjust? So like with Ted, even though he's on DIY raw, but I'm warming it up, because I told you, didn't I? Because he was getting the
Yes.
cramps and stuff, so I'm warming it up, and it's worked an absolute treat for him. But I have never had to do that before, because
Mhm.
2, 3 winters ago he was breaking ice and chewing it and not getting cramps because he was younger, but he's nearly 10.
Yes.
So I'm having to adapt and
Mhm.
change to him as an older dog now, which is fine. I can do that. It's not,
Mhm.
it takes 2 seconds to warm it up in the pan. It's no problem at all. Whether that will continue in the summer and whether he'll switch, I don't know yet. I will wait and see. It might just be that his digestion system now, as an older dog, has shifted.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And he will now always need cooked food, but I'm aware of that and I can fiddle with it and I
Mhm.
can test it. If I put him back on raw and I get the gurgly tummies back and the pancreas poos, as I call them, then no, he won't. He will go back to cooked. So
Yeah.
I can adjust it, and
Mhm.
and that's exactly what I've kind of done over the last 7 years with him. Is tweak and adjust, and I'm continually learning as well, because I'm like, oh, that's new. Let's
Yeah.
try that.
Yeah. There's so much out there, isn't there? But it is amazing how much just tweaking a diet a bit makes a difference for them. And then it does for me as an owner, because aside from anything else, the constant shaking of the head with the yeast and the constant licking and the nibbling at herself, it drives you mad. It's like sensory overload, isn't it?
It's
Horrible.
And it's
Yeah.
the stress that then puts on you that then is a trigger for her, because you're feeling stressed. So you're stuck in that cycle
Yeah.
of stress, which isn't good for anybody.
Mhm.
Yeah. And just
Oh,
trying to treat it. But actually, once I got advice from you and put all that in place, I mean, it was probably 4 weeks from literally start to it's gone. Her ears don't smell. She's not, apart from the normal shaking you get
yeah,
with a
but
dog.
that's
Yeah.
lab. That's just
That's,
lab
you
and
know,
water and being, young crazy
she
dog.
smells so much and then she overstimulates herself and she does a quick shakedown.
It's too much. It's too
It's
much.
too much.
Yeah.
It's constantly too much.
Because one of the other things that we spoke about at the last workshop briefly, wasn't it, was the flea and tick stuff.
Yes, and that's what I wanted to bring up today as well, because I can't make your workshop on Wednesday.
No, it's
Well, no, Bella's an overexcitable dog, and she's overexcitable around people and dogs. So I've been for the last 6, 8 months, lifetime, it feels like we've been teaching her dog neutrality. So she's not allowed to say hello to dogs. We ignore them. We do training if there's too many. So my friend's a dog trainer. She did your Wolf workshop a few weeks
Oh,
back.
Amanda.
Yes,
Yeah, she's
Amanda.
lovely. Yeah, she's
So
lovely.
I'm going to her training sessions because she's got
Oh,
puppy
brilliant.
classes,
And
so that me and Bella can just sit at the back and Bella can just get used to being around lots of dogs.
perfect, because she messaged me and said, "Are all your workshops on a Wednesday?" And I was like, she was like, "Oh, this is so tricky," because she obviously runs stuff on a Wednesday night as well, and
Yeah.
that was
Yeah.
why. So yeah, bless her. Because you because so essentially, because you've got a next door neighbor that fosters cats, don't you? And they have like 20 at a time, don't
They
they?
have
Oh,
about 20 at a time, and they've got about 7 or 8 of their own that wander around. And then I think the person down there has got 4 cats. There's an awful lot of cats. Um, and particularly with my previous dog, Penny, I really did down that because it's funny, I'm not a big believer in natural medicine for myself, bizarrely. I just take, do you know what I mean? But with my dog, there's just something about it. I just don't want to pump them full of medication. So I went down the natural route with her, as I do essentially for Bella, but I couldn't keep on top of I just couldn't keep on top of the fleas. I just couldn't keep on top of them. And I assume it's because the cats go in our garden. I speak to Rose and Alan, my neighbours. I probably shouldn't have named them then, but I have. No, they're
I don't
not
know
going to
where you
listen
live,
to
so it's
this.
fine.
And I suppose just there must just be lots of fleas because they bring in lots of feral cats as well that will come in with fleas. So it's about, I would love to go down the natural route, but I'm really worried because I know it was a nightmare trying to get rid of them in the house and everything.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a few things. There's one that we've done the PDF, so that it's downloadable from the shop, and it's like £9, but you get 5%
Okay.
discount. So that's in there. But obviously, there's stuff that we can obviously talk about now. But in there is a whole. It's 2 pages worth of figuring out your actual risk assessment essentially for Bella, so you can figure out. So obviously, having those cats next door is going to push you up into the higher realms, but then we've given you options of how you can do things in terms of what treatments potentially you could use and when you could use them, if you could do a detox protocol, which we've spoken about in the shop, haven't we, about potentially if you're going to give them during the summer
Yes.
months, you do a detox protocol at the same time when you give
Yes.
so that she's got some liver support and kidney support essentially to try and help flush as much out.
Yes.
Then a few other things that worth considering is just the fact that now you're building her immune system by supporting that microbiome by the diet changes you've made. So that will be having a positive impact as well. So
Yeah.
it's whether you do one treatment and then leave a treatment, and it's up to you then how you figure out where you feel comfortable, because obviously you don't want to end up with an issue, but then potentially it could be something like nematodes, couldn't it, in the garden. So they go in the soil. They are little worms. They go in the soil. They're microscopic tiny little things, but you can put them in the garden. They will eat the fleas.
Right.
No way, really?
Yes way. That was a real Bob and Ted. No, what was it? Bill and Ted. Yes way. No way.
Yeah.
And where do you get these from?
You can order them
Online.
online.
Yeah.
Yeah, for gardens. And there's also things like diatomaceous earth that you can put it on the dog. Some people argue that you shouldn't. Some people say that you can certainly. It can be drying on the dog itself. It's diatomaceous earth, for anyone who's not familiar with it, is little fossilized diatoms that are really sharp edged, and they physically cut the exoskeleton of the flea, which causes it to dry out. But you can put that same. So I also want to clarify for anyone listening, you get the diatomaceous earth that is essentially food grade that you can put on the body, and you can ingest it. We can take it as humans, but you can sprinkle that on your garden as well, so that the flea's crawling over it. And
I can't, yeah.
exactly. So there's different management strategies that you can kind of consider as you evaluate what the risk is for your individual situation. And it's not just about what you're doing to the dog, but what can you do in your wider environment
Yeah.
to help protect. And those are some really easy ones that you can do, including stuff like planting or making sure, like by the doors or where your dog is hanging out, that you've got plants that are natural repellents. So even things like planting rosemary and that sort of thing will help to keep the pests, the amount of those pests down.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing.
Yeah. Okay, and that's really interesting then. I mean, yeah, I could do. I'm going to redo my garden in the summer, and I'm going to put bedding all along the back wall, which is where their cats tend to come in because it's at the top patio. It's away from us, isn't it? Although I've found one lying in the grass the other day having a snooze. It wasn't till Bella went out there, and then it wasn't having a snooze. To be fair, I didn't see it out there because I'm not actually up for Bella chasing cats. I just didn't see it. I wasn't expecting it. It was only when she took off and the cat ran. I realised what had happened. Okay, so I might try that. I did try I can't say it, the DE, the
diatomaceous earth. Yeah.
I did try that with my other dog. I wonder whether I was at fault as well, that those things sometimes you're not as consistent with, are you? And I think you probably do need to be consistent with them.
With all of this, you do. I think that's the thing, is that there's sort of the misconception that the pharmaceuticals are convenient, but they come with their own price. And it really is about taking a layered, consistent approach. And
seasonally as well.
Seasonally, yeah. Like looking at when it's worse, at certain times of the year, etc., and staying on it. And especially like now's a good time for anybody considering using things like garlic, for example, as an internal preventative for your dog, because it takes several weeks for it to start to build up in the system and then seep out in the skin. That's basically how something like that happens, is that it's kind of like if you've had a curry, right? And then the next day you
Yes.
kind of smell of it. It's that same effect that's going on with the dog. And it's not that the dog ends up smelling like garlic, but it does to the fleas and the ticks. And so that is
Okay.
a true repellent, but you need to build it up in the dog's system for several weeks. So it's thinking ahead.
And the same goes for like what you could be washing, giving her a
Yeah.
weekly wash with like the Fox and Flea shampoo bar, for example, that's got neem oil and some of the other bits in. So that again, it's that layered approach. You're coming at it from the inside out with something like the garlic, then you're washing her with something that is
Yes.
a repellent. Then you can protect the garden as much as you can, possibly, whether it's DE or whether it is the nematodes, the plants that you've got by the doors or the plants near the walls where the cats are coming in, so that you're doing everything you can from a kind of natural defense perspective to kind of put those barriers in to minimize it as much as possible.
Right.
So there's loads that you could be tinkering with whilst and obviously that's not to say you shouldn't use the other treatments. If that's where you feel comfortable, go with what you feel comfortable. You can do the detox protocol alongside it. But as you get more confident and potentially want to change, you can.
Yeah.
There's flexibility.
Yeah.
None of this is set in stone. You can
Right.
go with what works for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, according to your risk and your comfort level.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard, isn't it? Because what I want to do is do it all naturally, because that's genuinely what I believe in. But having fleas is really awful. I wonder, so how would you feed garlic? She's about 30 kilos. Would I just give maybe one boil? I assume you, again, like the other vegetables that she's having,
So
you
you
cook.
can give garlic raw,
Raw.
but but don't, if you go online, don't, there's one particular
Oh, yeah.
that will tell, well, if you go online, it can you give your dog garlic, the main answers will be no, because the toxicity study, but what was it, they had to force feed them like 50 bulbs, or it was a ridiculous,
Yeah.
it was a ridiculous amount before it got toxic. So what we're talking about in small doses is absolutely fine, but there's one big social media player that will in the natural space that will be like, you have to crush it and leave it for 15 minutes to do certain, so magic happens, and then you get just get the garlic in. I just don't.
Okay.
How I do it is actually, so you can feed it raw. Lucky doesn't, he will not eat it raw. So I have both fermented garlic cloves. And so I will put that in like I often will do like a puppy kimchi is what I call it, where I take shredded vegetables, cover it in a brine of water and salt, and then just let it sit on my counter for 4 days and then pop it in the fridge. Super easy. I add garlic to that. I also add garlic to his bone
That's
broth.
what I do for Ted.
So
Okay.
so then I'm cooking that, for over 24 hours, and then he's just getting that daily.
And I put oregano and thyme in
Yeah.
my broth as well as garlic, so he's getting a full, because the
Yeah.
oregano and thyme is brilliant for the gut anyway, isn't it? That was off of Carol with her antimicrobials, but then the garlic's in there as well, and even through the summer, Ted will have that, because normally I'd go garlic hot dog. No, it's not going to happen. But for Ted, I can still do that because garlic's warming. Because again, because of what does it do to our bodies? It's so for a hot dog, but in a broth, I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
And again, because his diet is balanced over energetically, it's balanced over the rest of the day. I'm not going to worry about a little bit of garlic in his broth, but I know the benefits are huge in terms of supporting him.
And thyme is also really good for repelling fleas.
Okay. So it seems like I need to make my own bone broth, doesn't it?
So I just came over from Mexico where I had to make all of this DIY. There isn't this kind of a dog industry over there, so I had to do everything DIY. And I just popped over and I've not got my setup yet, so I've been buying the commercial stuff. And I have to say, my bone broth is so much better than what you can buy commercially.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And the fact that you can customize it and add it in and you can get the kind of gelatinous feel of it as well. That's great for joints and great for the gut. And it's so much cheaper. I mean, I was absolutely shocked at the cost of bone broth. And if you can't make your own, I get that. But if you can, I would suggest doing it because you can add in all of these particular goodies to
Yeah.
customize it for your dog. And the benefits of it are huge.
It's only because I don't have a slow cooker, but they're not expensive.
They're not.
I
They're
can invest in a slow cooker. And then, yeah, how much garlic would I put in then if I'm making a batch? I mean, I've never done it before. I know the kind of ethos around the bones that you put in the, like marrow bones and feet for the collagen.
Best bones you can get at the shop to
Yeah.
make that I have made the best broth with continuously for the last 2-3 months is the pork rib and spine from Dog's Butcher. They are magic.
Okay.
And pork's brilliant because it's cooling. So yeah, neutral cooling.
Cool, yeah.
So it's a brilliant one for our hot woofers. And then I can add some garlic to it, and it doesn't is we're good. So
And you just use that one bone. You don't. So you
yeah,
don't
well,
need
it comes in a pack, so it's a pack
just
of rib and spine. So it's about 600-700 kilos of kilos. That would be a lot, wouldn't it? Oh my God, how would you even grams of bones? And I just pop them in the slow cooker overnight, and then the next morning, and then I strain it, and then we're good to go. Oh, Ted's come to say hi. Would you like to? Do you want to come see Joe? Do you want to come say hi? There he is.
Oh, he's beautiful.
Lucky's currently wearing a coat and sleeping under my coat on a blanket.
Hence the cool dog.
Hence the cool
Do you
dog.
think he's a hot dog by needing to be with me and in my face?
So because I'm on the phone line, I'm not normally in the evening. Bella is by me. She's got one paw on my leg.
Oh.
She is hanging over the couch, but she's whining like.
Oh.
Oh, but in terms of your question about how many cloves of garlic, so if you've got,
So if I use that pack of so I've got 600 to 700 grams of bone.
I would do, so if you're putting them in a slow cooker, that's about a smaller, not one of the giant slow cookers, but like a normal sized slow cooker. For that amount, I would generally put, say, 4 cloves of garlic in.
Okay, so not a huge amount, not full bowl, like small,
No, not a full bowl.
4 individual cloves.
Yeah.
I usually chop
Crush
it up
'em.
or crush it just to break it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, then I just let it simmer overnight on low. And then, like I say, those pork rib and spine, every single time I've got a really lovely jelly off of it, like proper wobble. And it's so
Okay.
satisfying.
And how much water do you put in? Sorry, because I'm being
Cover it.
Just cover it. That's
You
all.
cover
just cover it in with water and put some oregano and thyme in there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
And a bit of garlic.
Yeah. I also will add in veg from the end of the week. And again, I mentioned that Lucky is a water element, which is focused on the kidneys. So I'll add in things like if I've got a bit of asparagus, which feeds the kidneys, or some celery, that kind of a thing, my sort of scraps, anything that's dog safe, no onion, no leek, that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
You can add that kind of stuff in. Parsley is another good thing that I add in. So any kind of scraps, I don't go to buy those things. I'm using up what's kind of in my fridge, if you see what I mean, at the end. And that adds in other nutrition.
Okay. All right, then I can do stuff
And
like
again,
that.
that's how you can tweak it away from the commercial stuff that's available. Not knocking it, because it's great that we've got those options. But if you want to start tinkering and actually really making it specific for your dog, this is the way to do it. So it just makes it so much easier. And it's not, it really isn't difficult to
But it's also so expensive. Again, no fault, because they are selling a product with packaging and they've made it and they've gone through that expense. But it was like, I think it was £23. I bought 2 pouches, and that she's got 1 ice cube thing left, so we haven't got enough for the rest of the month.
Yeah.
Because you get the Alexander ones, don't you? The plastic, but the pouches. And again, so even from a plastic perspective as well, if you're even thinking kind of environmentally, it's a lot of plastic, isn't it? Whereas if you do it yourself, I've got reusable tubs that I just fill it up. I put 1 tub in the fridge and I just freeze the rest. And as soon as I'm getting low on that one, I just take the next one out, and I've just constantly got one in rotation.
Okay. I'll order a slow cooker then, because I did think that anyway. And then I'm wondering whether or not she's had her flea treatment, which is for 3 months. She takes 1 tablet and it does 3 months. which will get us through the worst of the spring kind of summer, I suppose.
Yeah.
June. I wonder whether I spend this time now then putting the garlic in her.
Mhm.
Do you put the DE in her food? Is that
I
no?
no, I wouldn't feed it to her. I would look at if she's got fleas. And again, some
Brush it
people
on her.
brush it on her, but and some people, and I agree, use it with caution because it's quite dusty and it can get into your lungs and into their lungs. So always apply it outside and see whether or not it works for your dog because it can be quite drying for their skin. So if a dog tends to lean more towards dry, I would say absolutely don't use it. But I would only do that if she's got a problem with fleas.
Okay.
I would prioritize doing something like wearing a bandana, for example, that you put some essential oils on that are repellents. So every time you're going
Okay.
out for a walk, you put that on. And then when you come back home, you can take it off. Because we also need to remember that essential oils are medicine. And our dogs have incredibly sensitive noses. So you don't want to necessarily have that in their face the whole time. But having it on when they're out, taking it off when they come home, that's a great strategy.
There's
Yeah.
also some, like the flea and tick collars that are
Yes.
there are now available ones that are based on essential oils that
Yeah.
you can just put those on before a walk and then take it off when you get home from a walk, so that
Yeah.
so again, there are lots of alternatives to those things that you can try. So I've just written a note of some things, and I can put it in an email, or we'll
Mhm.
Yeah.
put it in
The
the
membership.
membership and put it in there.
Yeah.
So these are some of the product suggestions and the
Yeah.
ideas, because
Yeah.
I think a lot of people will have the same questions
Yeah.
and the same curiosities right now about, well, I don't want to necessarily use those products, the pharma ones, but what are the alternatives? How do I do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And something that comes up a lot for anybody who's listening from the US and Canada, one of the concerns, I know it's not here in the UK, but fleas and ticks, they present one problem, but mosquitoes with heartworm present another issue that people are trying to
Yes.
navigate. And that is also something where we would say you need to evaluate your particular risk, depending on where you're living, whether or not the temperature ever drops to a certain point. Like when I was in Mexico, it never was cool. There's mosquitoes all year round. So you think
Yeah.
about it a little bit differently. But then the advice would be quite similar. If you target, and you can get, if you choose to go the pharma route, you can get pharmaceuticals that are just for heartworm and not the flea and tick. So you can then minimize the number of chemicals that your dog is being exposed to. But it would be the same as we're saying to you, Joe, of you add in a detox protocol
Yeah.
and in order to support the dog. So it's not don't do the pharmaceuticals, it's do them correctly and do them in a targeted fashion and then support the body to be able to deal with it on the
Yeah.
other end of it.
Yeah. I think that's what I'll do. I think I'll support her through this one. And then, which I think we said the yeast defeat or whatever. I can't remember what we
Yeah, there
said
was
now.
some bits in the yeast to feed because I think it's got chlorella in
That,
it, which is
yes, that kind of overlapped.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
And then,
if once you finish has she finished the yeast?
yeah.
Yeah,
So I only did it for the 10 days because I could see it 7 days. It was really worked, but just gave it an extra 3 days. And then she doesn't have that now.
perfect. So you could try something like the detox blend from the shop. You know, the one in the brown jar that I showed you when I was there.
Yes.
That's River and Wren. It's a
Mm.
really lovely and kind of herb wise, it's really neutral, so it's not hot or cool. Steph, who's created it, is
Okay.
an absolute whiz. She's so good. But in there, I've had a couple of dogs use it and they've done really, really well with it. And it's really lovely. And this is a really good time of the year anyway to do a
Mm-hmm.
kind of spring detox at this point to support the
Mm-hmm.
liver and all of those other things because of where we are seasonally. So
Yeah.
it's for 6 weeks. You do it for 6 weeks. It will help her through the one that she's just had, whilst you're then starting to pull in the other things as
Yes.
well. And then it's up to you whether you want to choose to do another treatment or you want to see how she goes because you've done the kind of the background work, some in the garden, some on her, some in her,
Yes.
all of those things. Then you can see how you feel when it's due for her next one.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, absolutely. And I might put some DE in the garden, sprinkle that over, and I'll just plant some rosemary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's another thing that you can do in the garden, which sounds sort of crazy, but this is also something that's quite effective, is you make a garlic rinse for your garden that you would get one of those attachments to your, like your hose, right? That kind of, what I don't know what it's called, but it's like a little bottle that you screw
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and then
Okay.
you,
and you spray it.
Yeah.
yeah,
You fill that with garlic and you let that sit, and then you spray the garlic over the grass.
That's ingenious. That
Yeah,
makes
so
so much sense.
that's another way
that's
of
a good idea.
repelling as well that can be useful
Yeah.
for people.
But I could put that on my fences because they come in over the fences.
Oh yeah,
So if I put them on the fence at the point they're coming in,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And that is the strategy to all of this. It's looking at what do you have control over? Where can you mitigate? What can you do internally? What can you do on the dog externally? What can you do in your environment?
yeah,
And that's regardless, because I think, we mentioned it in the podcast episode that we did on parasites, that the pharmaceutical preventatives are actually treatments. They don't
yeah,
repel. So you still want to build in a repellent factor, because those only work when the
When they're
fleas and the ticks
bitten. Yeah.
bite your dog. So you still
yeah,
don't want them biting the dog. So as much as you can do to keep them off through various forms of repellents, the better off your situation's going to be.
yeah. No, that's true. Because then she's being bitten anyway,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and
And
that's not
the
what
only
we
reason
want.
they're dying is because of what her blood
What?
is, because it's got the farmer in it. That's why.
Yeah.
But what impact is that potentially having on her as well? And that's the bit that we're trying to kind of unravel by the fact
Yeah,
that there are alternatives, but we totally get that every dog has a different level of risk. And when you've got 20 cats living next door,
Right.
that's a level of risk
high risk, isn't it?
if they're being fostered and they're feral.
Right.
That so some of these things you can be telling to your lovely neighbours and
Yeah.
say, go and do it in their garden too, because if they do it in their garden, that's going to have an impact all over anyway, isn't it? Because it'll have an impact on the cats that they're looking after and minimize their risk potentially
Yeah.
as well. So
Yeah. I mean, they're very precious over cats. I mean, because I'm gonna get my garden redone in the summer and I'm gonna have new fencing. I'm very tempted to buy, you can buy fencing that has got rolls on the top
yeah,
that the cats can't get in because they can't walk on
yeah.
it. I
Yeah.
just don't know how they're going to take that. I need to tread carefully, but I've had enough of cats messing my garden.
Yeah, and well,
Yeah.
I mean,
It's a
I
conversation.
think that's a really fair point to say to them, and the fact that it's stressful for Bella if you let them out, and you don't, and you could just reframe it that to stop Bella potentially hurting one of the cats, this is what you're going to do,
Mm-hmm.
because
Yeah,
you notice
Mm-hmm.
that Bella's got more stressed recently because she's seen a cat and she's lunging and she does it. So it's you doing a lovely protective job
Mm-hmm.
for their cats.
Yeah.
Just
yeah.
reframe it.
And that's not because they're becoming in the garden more recently because the weather's got nicer. And then we were on a walk the other day and she almost pulled me over because she saw a cat. I didn't notice it, but she's seen cats before and she's never been bothered by them. She's really easy to just call her away. The fact that she almost pulled me off my feet, I thought, yeah, you've realised that these are things to chase now where she hadn't before. And that's just because she's had 3 or 4 in the garden in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah. So there you go then. So I think
Absolutely.
you can reframe it and I think you can say it's to protect the cats
Yep.
whilst actually doing the job for you.
Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly.
bit of both. Well,
Exactly.
it's protecting all the animals,
Right.
Exactly.
That's
Because
which
right.
the cats
is,
don't want to get stressed out by being chased by Bella, and Bella doesn't want to get stressed out by chasing them. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a win-win for everybody, isn't it?
yeah, I'm not sure she's stressed out by chasing. I don't know that she is, but she is when she has her flea treatment every
Yeah.
few months.
But Joe, I wanted to mention too, if you've not listened to the podcast episode that I did with Dr. Katie Woodley on skin and gut connection, she speaks specifically about different detox protocols.
Okay, I'll
It's
have a
well worth
listen.
listening to that because of the different levels of detox. So we typically think, oh, just add in chlorella or just add in um, what's the other one that we always talk about? Oh, my brain's kind of perimenopause. Milk thistle.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, well done. I'm glad you
Yeah.
said that because
I was thinking white
You're
thistle,
drawing a
but I
blank.
thought white thistle
Right.
doesn't sound
Well,
right. But I,
and those are part of it, but there are multiple stages to the detox process, and you want to make sure that you're adding something in for each one. So she talks about how to do that.
okay.
And so that could be helpful for you thinking about building a protocol.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. Thank you.
I was just
You're
checking what
welcome.
was in the river and run because it's a yummy, it's a lovely one. Hang on. Celery seed, milk thistle, nettle, burdock, hawthorn, dandelion, and yarrow. So it's a nice balance with not being one too many of any
Yeah.
of them.
And something that Katie Woodley recommends is beetroot as part of it's like the later phase of detox to help get that. So you can have those things at the earlier stage, and then you have the beetroot to help push that out. So that's something you could add into her food as a veg.
Okay, yeah.
Right?
Just don't panic when she pees red.
I have to remind myself that too when I've had,
I
am I
do.
dying? Like,
I know. I'm like, and then I'm like, oh no, it's okay. I don't need to go
Yeah, I
to the
love
doctor.
beetroot.
It's,
I
I
love
love
beetroot.
I
beetroot.
love it too, but every single time I forget, and I'm like, oh my God, am I hemorrhaging? Like,
I might have to go next to
I
an
think
ambulance.
I know.
we've all done that,
Yeah.
I think. Okay, that's been really helpful because it is, I think, like I said, having seen how much changing her diet has got rid of the yeast, changed her, really calmed her behaviour down, really settled her. I kind of want to continue on that. I don't want to do all of that and then undo it unnecessarily. And it might be necessary and it's fine. If it is, it is.
It is
But if
exactly.
I can find a way to do it without, I think that would suit kind of how I like to look after her a bit better.
Check out our PDF because I think those questions
Yeah, I will. I'll get
helpful for
that.
you to evaluate your risk and then what you can do according to what level you feel you're at.
Yeah, I will. I'll do that.
Yeah, I think I'll have to double check. I think it's First Light 5. I think that's what the discount code
We
is.
can send that out.
We'll put it in the chat yeah. I'm sure
Yeah,
that's the one I did.
Yeah.
that's fine. And then I'll have a read of that. And you say there's a quiz in there.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
literally it's 2 pages. So you answer the questions and you plus and minus depending on where you are, and then you count up your score, and then it'll tell you whether you're high, medium, or low risk. And then on the following pages, we've broken down the F.E.T.C.H approach into each of those categories, high, medium, and low, and then you could where you sit, so the bits that you could do from the bits that apply to you.
Yeah.
What you might be aiming for. So if you're currently high risk, but you want to take a farmer approach, that's fine. This is what you do. But if you want to then step towards seasonally farmer, this is what you do. And then if you want to go completely natural, this is what you do. So it's just to give you all the options and give you all the information so that you can make a decision what feels right for you.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that certainly sounds like a good starting place, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%.
So do you feel good that you've got a starting point now?
Yeah, I do. I do. Because I was really, again, not overthinking it, but there's so much information. You just think, oh, what do I do?
Yeah.
But I like the idea of doing it kind of a couple of things, so that maybe a collar with essential oils and garlic in her system, and then stuff in the garden, and kind of come at it at all different angles.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good idea.
Yeah,
Good.
it's cool.
Good.
Yeah, we love
Thank you, guys.
Well, thank
welcome.
you. Thank you. What other things would you like us to kind of help you out with? What other topics would be helpful for you?
Oh, crumbs. I don't even know. Because I did 2 of the workshops, didn't I? I did the bio.
Yeah.
I can never know what it's called.
Microbiome, yeah, with the lovely Joe, bless him, such
Yeah.
a man.
And that was, again, just a huge amount of information. I just think anything around dog's health, but I like the stuff around the kind of what type of dog are they, and then tailoring diets for that. So kind of health problems, because even if Bella doesn't have a health problem now, I think having that information on board is really helpful. And in the raw food workshop, Stacey, I think what I found all of it helpful, but some of the stuff was really helpful in terms of giving me that knowledge to kind of argue a bit with vets. because you do get judged
Mhm.
when you're raw feeding by some vets.
Mhm.
Luckily, my vet doesn't seem bothered by it. I don't think they do, but they don't challenge me on it. My first dog, because I was brand new to raw feeding, I found a vet an hour away that promoted raw feeding,
That's amazing.
just so that I didn't have to have those arguments.
Yeah.
Which vet are you with now?
I'm with Medivet now because they're 2 minutes up the road from me, and I've got more confidence now to do what I want and not do what they want.
Forest Row one or?
No, I'm at Gossip Green.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's up the road. Yeah, and you know that all Medivet vets do titer testing. So instead of the annual vaccinations that
Yes.
all Medivets do titer, you just have to ask for it.
Yes, because I've spoken to her about that, and that we're going to do that next time.
Fab.
But yeah, so vaccinations would be a good one and that type of thing. I think anything like that.
Okay.
I find it all really interesting. So I'm probably not the the
I
best
don't
argument because I like listen,
going
you
down a
talk,
rabbit hole, don't you? That's
you
what
talk, I'll listen and learn.
sounds good. Yeah, but yeah, Medivet are all right, apart from the one at up the road, the Horsham one. I'm blacklisted there.
The Sears Croft.
I
Well,
have a
let me.
big black mark against my name at
Well,
that
I won't go there. But I was at a vet's an hour away, but my first dog, sorry, because you've got to go, I know the timing. My first dog became very, very unwell in the middle of the night. And they are a local emergency vet. So they were like, yes, bring her in. They looked at her and they said, she's absolutely fine. We're busy. She looks fine. Take her home, see your vet in the morning. And I knew something wasn't quite right. So I phoned my vet, travelled down to Stovington at like 5:30 in the morning, and she had a tendon in her heart had snapped. And they said if you'd left her till 9 o'clock, she would have died.
Oh my goodness.
And they took one look at her and said she looks fine.
But this speaks, Joe, to something that we talk about an awful lot of trusting your intuition and knowing your dog.
Yeah, I just knew she wasn't right, and I knew it wasn't normal. And she spent the weekend there, and she sadly passed away 4 weeks later because there was nothing they could do to reverse.
Yeah.
The tendon just suddenly snapped.
You said she was a cavalier. Yeah, so
Common.
the heart things can
Yeah.
be tricky with those, can't they?
Yeah.
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 And I did everything. I did all my research. She had health tested parents. I did everything. So I don't trust these quotes.
I'm glad it's just me.
I'm gonna have to find out off of this why you're blacklisted. That's a conversation I'm very interested in.
Oh, I can tell you.
Yeah, I want to know that.
Yes, I'm sure I'll see you at the shop, and I can tell
I
you.
will come and come and get Stacey out here.
I need to know why she was blacklisted.
Yeah, well, I'll be popping in the next few days to get my pork ribs and whatever spine, and I'll make that up.
Dog's butcher,
Yeah.
pork rib and spine. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're fab.
And
Perfect.
for other people listening,
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
like
sorry.
you said, feet are really good.
Yes.
Tails are really good as well. Ribs, knuckles,
Feet can be handy as well.
feet.
Did we
Yeah,
say
we said
feet? Oh,
feet.
so all right.
Yeah, feet. Those are my kind of
Yeah.
go-tos.
Feet can be good.
Marrow bones.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the neck and for some reason that batch of the
Yeah.
pig ones are just, and then because it's got the ribs in it, you get loads of meat that comes off, and I save that for Ted to
Yeah.
get as toppers for his dinners.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
you can pull the meat off. Obviously, you can't give them the cooked bone, but the meat that comes off.
But the meat that comes off, you can.
Yeah.
Lovely.
And we have a free PDF on a bone broth recipe for anybody who wants it.
Oh, lovely.
We can send that.
Perfect.
Yeah, that was on my list.
Oh,
I
there
wrote
you
it
go.
on my list.
There you go.
Same brain.
Organised. Winning.
Same
Oh,
brain.
thank you so much for your time.
You're
Thank
very
you.
welcome.
Thank you.
I'm glad I joined. I mean, I would have come anyway. I was planning to.
Good, that's what we like. We
yeah.
just more chats like this. This is the stuff that we need, and we just need more people to just be aware that they can ask us these questions and just that we're here. This is the stuff that we love doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We'd
Yeah.
do this 24/7, really, wouldn't we?
We would. We would. So we do it to one another, so
Yeah.
it's like, well, what?
Why not just let other people join in on our rabbit holes? Why not?
Yeah.
Let's just do it.
Yeah, no, it's great because it is a minefield and it just gives you direction to go down. And I really appreciate it for sure.
So
Thank
welcome.
you.
You're so welcome. Well,
Thanks.
I'm sure, well, we might both see you at the shop in the next few days then, so we'll see.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That would be nice.
On it? Yeah.
Lovely.
Well, thank you, Joe. Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
And again, if there are any questions that come up between now and the next Q&A, leave us some notes in the chat section because we'll just keep a running list of what people want
Yeah,
the
yeah, I
answer
do
and
too.
prioritize those who show up live. We'll answer your questions. So, yeah.
Lovely. All right then.
All
Thank
right.
you guys.
Take
Enjoy the
care.
rest of your evening.
You too.
Later. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.